please allow me to introduce Claire Johnson. Claire is our MWA NorCal president. Hello, Claire. She is a Berkeley graduate and was at one point accepted for a PhD program in history. She decided that she would rather create luscious desserts. So she ended up getting into the professional chefs program at the San Francisco, it's the California Culinary Academy in San Francisco. She spent 8 years as a pastry chef, height of the food revolution. She wrote about her experiences, that passion and frenzy are characterized in her first novel, which is called Beat Until Stiff. She has a few other works that she's done as well that might come up during discussion. But for now, I'm going to pass this over to you, Claire, and I'm going to go silent. I'll be monitoring chat. And if anyone has questions, please just let me know.
Hello, guys. Thanks for attending. I want to introduce Janet Margot, who has extensive experience with Amazon. I saw half of her presentation with Brian Cohen, and I had to leave halfway through. So I immediately reached out to her and said, "Oh, can you do this for MWA?" Because I think that a lot of authors find themselves in the position of having to use Amazon to publicize their books. So why don't you take it away, Janet?
Great, thank you. Give me a second here to get my screen shared. Oh, screen sharing's disabled.
Lori?
All right.
Working on it. Is it going now?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be here to talk about Amazon ads. To me, this is just not another author conference. It is a genre that I love deeply and dearly, so I'm super excited to be here. As Claire said, I do have extensive experience with Amazon ads. I did work for the company for almost 10 years, building out the Amazon book ads program. I also have a small book marketing consultancy where we do primarily focus on, of course, Amazon ads and optimizing your presence on Amazon. I also do teach the Amazon ads for indie authors program for Mark Dawson's self-publishing formula. But this is not really just for indie authors anymore, which is kind of new this month, and I will talk about that in a little bit. So today's agenda is in 3 parts. Lori mentioned something about questions earlier. I think the best way to address questions in today's session is between each of the parts. First, we're just going to have a brief overview and then of Amazon ads, and some of you may not be familiar at all with it, so feel free to ask questions. To those of you who have been working in the system, this may feel a little redundant. Part 2 is about what it takes to be successful, and much of this is going to be not just about ads, it's really about optimizing your presence on Amazon, which is very important to your ad performance as well. And then at the end, we'll wrap up in part 3 with the top tips for 2022, which I'm sure you'll all have questions about. So I anticipate small Q&As between part 1 and 2, between 2 and 3, and then a longer on part 3. If I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down. Happy to take notes in that vein. By the end of today's session, I'm hoping that you will understand eligibility and accessing ads, how ads intersect with e-commerce, which is a really boring line for me to type there, but I think it's super an important concept for all of us to understand. You'll identify gaps in your own Amazon presence that you need to address, and then you're going to walk away with my top tips for this year. Let's get into the overview. Of course, you've been all on Amazon, browsing, maybe buying, but I invite you to take a look using a slightly different lens. We often refer to Amazon as if it's a single entity, but really it's a convergence of many factions of business that come together to form the customer experience. As an author, understanding where you sit in that mix of advertising, retail, and even subscriptions, whether or not you're in Kindle Unlimited, All of this will help shed light on where it makes sense to insert yourself on the purchase path of potential readers. And that's really what advertising is. It's stepping out into the road when your customer comes browsing down the lane and you're like, hey, I'm here. So this lane is the retail roadway. And let's start there. Going to bore you with some stats for a minute, but it means something. Amazon has over 300 million active customer accounts worldwide. Now that's officially surpassed Walmart as the largest retail seller outside of China. In 2020, I don't have the 2020 numbers, the site had 213 million unique visitors every month in the US alone. That's capturing 41 cents of every dollar spent online in the US. Prime membership also grew to 200 million globally in 2020, and I do have the number for 2021 there. It's up to 147 million in the US. Prime membership's important, even if you're selling books and even if you're not in Kindle Unlimited, because these Prime customers are loyal and they're already in the mindset to purchase. The Amazon customer base is so desirable to advertisers in both quantity and quality that even industries who can't sell directly on Amazon will run big budget ad campaigns. For example, you may see ads for credit cards, even though financial services companies can't list their services in the marketplace. They run big budget ads with giant placements, but they're not eligible for the type of self-service advertising that we focus on. So there's power in Amazon retail. You have the customer base, which is huge, the loyalty to the Amazon brand, which means increases with subscription engagement, and an incredibly diverse selection, which means a very diverse audience. And diversity can mean many things, but in this particular context, I'm referring to the broad selection of products, or in our case, books. You can see that in the mystery, thriller, suspense genre, there are loads of subgenres. And this means you can target individuals who are actually looking to read these subgenres. Mystery, thriller, and suspense is the second highest selling genre in the Kindle store. That's according to a K-Lytics report that just came out this month. And it's been trending, according to K-Lytics, on a high and rising level since 2016, with a really short dip in 2019. So Amazon has expanded exponentially since its bookseller beginning. And some of you might be thinking, okay, size, loyalty that she referred to, that's great for a lot of product lines, but what does it mean for books? Even with its dominance of online shopping across many categories, the media vertical, which when they provide these measurements, it includes actually books, music, and video. It's one of the two verticals where Amazon receives the majority of US e-commerce sales. That's 83% of all online book purchases. Last year, Amazon funded a study with Kantar Research and found that 30% of global surveyed book buyers actually do the research on Amazon, even if they wind up purchasing elsewhere. That's an important data point, but what does it mean to you? So I opened today with saying that Amazon is a convergence of many factions of business that form a customer experience. So let's think deeper about that. What does it mean to you as an author? It means you have an author flywheel. Each element of your business on Amazon will build further momentum for your book or your catalog of books. You want to keep this flywheel spinning. So your flywheel turns on right here at the left when you start creating your listing on Amazon. This effectively pushes play and the wheel will start spinning. So your listing will include the keywords and categories that you use when you upload to KDP. That becomes metadata. Your metadata feeds into the retail machine. And then based on that metadata, the retail machine will match your book with customers when they're searching or browsing. And this gives the first opportunity for organic sales on Amazon. So today's presentation is not just about paid ads, right? It's going to help with organic sales. And organic is unpaid. Now enter advertising, and this boosts discovery further. Your book is going to get more visible in search results and the browse experience. And then if you have third-party traffic, like if you're doing Facebook ads, you're sending traffic there, you're just keeping this wheel spinning and building the sales velocity. That's what we want. So the Amazon ads that we commonly refer to in the author community, these are sponsored ads. That's what Amazon calls them in marketing material, but I'm sure a lot of you have heard them referred to as AMS ads. Sometimes I slip and still use that term as well. This stands for Amazon Marketing Services. Sponsored ads are a set of ad types that are completely self-service. With a self-service program, there's no type of application required, no need to even work with an Amazon employee to get started. Sponsored ads is a cost per click ad model, so impressions are not guaranteed. This means once you create an ad, it delivers an impression for free, and you only pay if a customer clicks on the ad. When they click on the ad, they're taken to a landing page, and that's the detail page for your book. Your credit card is then charged afterwards. There's no upfront payment required, low minimum budget. You can set a daily budget for as low as $1 a day. We'll talk about that later. I do not recommend it. This is very different from display ads that you may see running on Amazon. Like I mentioned, financial services. They might run in big hero placements like the Amazon homepage. These are premium display ads. They used to be called AMG. They're fully serviced. They require a high minimum buy, like usually around $30,000, which doesn't go very far, like the campaign won't run very long. Your impressions are guaranteed, and an account manager will curate your campaign and help you deliver new creative. I do not recommend these, the premium ads. They're very costly. I put a $sign there. I really should be putting 3 or 4 because it's that costly. So title eligibility, what can be advertised? So this recently changed this month, and I'll tell you where. Every author account is eligible to advertise. That's every KDP author account is eligible to advertise, but there are guidelines at the book level. So you can advertise either ebooks or print books. Audiobooks are not yet supported by Amazon ads. You can create ads through your KDP account, well, starting in your KDP account, and then it goes into the ads dash. But what they changed just a couple weeks ago was that if you're not publishing through KDP, and instead either you're a traditionally published author or perhaps you're indie, but you have your titles plumbing through Draft to Digital or any of those aggregators, or even Ingram, you can go into Author Central now and access the ads dashboard that way. You have to go into Author Central and claim that ASIN, and then you'll be able to advertise against it. Titles and the cover must meet the book ads guidelines, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Really, the only exclusion on book types in all countries worldwide in terms of advertising is erotica. So even though you can sell it on Amazon, you cannot advertise against it at this time. Let's talk about the mystery thriller suspense hot spots. I do encourage you to read the advertising guidelines that are available on Amazon. I can share a link for that. I think it was on the previous slide. Again, this is regardless of whether they're okay to sell. There are certain areas that you cannot advertise, and it's usually in MTS, it's usually about the cover and not about the content. Sorry, that was in the way there. Exploitation of sensitive events. This is an interesting one happening right now with what's going on in Eastern Europe. There are folks who have been advertising Cold War thrillers that are suddenly unable to advertise. So exploitation of sensitive events. At one point in the beginning of COVID, I think that COVID also got swept up in this. So they weren't allowing ads on books that contained pandemic content. Exploitation of sensitive events will change from time to time. Now, I don't know if the war in Eastern Europe continues. I don't know if there's going to be a time when they will actually allow advertising against it, but it's something to be really careful about. I wouldn't say don't create an ad because it's not going to ding you if your ad gets rejected, but just know that going in. Excessive blood. This can be a problem in thrillers very often where there's blood on the cover. Just don't do it. Look at these guidelines before you are having your book cover designed. Humans in distress. This is really an interesting one. I've seen some rejections on humans in distress when it's almost comical. You know, I saw like on a graphic mystery novel, there was a policeman hovering over a man sitting on the concrete, and that was actually rejected. So it can be pretty wide and ambiguous when they use the term distress. And then finally, this is a huge one, weapons. Now, weapons, I know that weapons pointing at a customer are definitely not allowed, but sometimes they're also, if a weapon kind of looks too scary and ominous, they will reject it. Anytime you get rejected, you can always appeal that rejection, but just know that these are the sensitive spots, the sensitive hot spots. It's all cover related. And basically they're trying to make sure that the covers are suitable for a general audience. So KDP authors and other authors now have access to 3 types of ads as of this writing: sponsored products, sponsored brands, and lock screen ads. If you understand these ad types, you can figure out how to bring your catalog closer to the right reader at any time during the customer journey. Sponsored products is the original ad product. The ads appear in search results and on book detail pages. You can use keyword, product, or category targeting, which we'll talk about today too. And they are really designed to increase visibility within browse or search. And I should note that the ad only shows one book at a time. I do consider this the best always on ad. Sponsored brands, they appear above search results. You can target also by keyword or other books or genres. This will actually display 3 titles here. These 3 here with a headline, an image, and all of this is clickable. I advise that for strategic use, limited use, it can be very expensive, but it also can be for short periods of time very profitable. And lastly, we have Lockscreen. Lockscreen is for ebooks only because they do appear on Kindle devices on the home screen and lock screen. You can target by interest or genre, and it displays a single product. Let's talk about the ad placements. Here you can see search results. In this case, I've searched for my own book on Amazon, and you can see that there is a mix of paid and organic listings. I see 3 slots here. In the very top slot, this is that sponsored brands that I pointed out earlier. It's showing 3 books in that slot. And the ad creative also includes the publisher logo, that's the creative pen, and a headline, your guide to successful self-publishing. So next, there are 2 ad slots here. Both of these are sponsored products, but I've highlighted them in a single box. And you can see here that I am advertising. And even though, I don't know what happened to this page here. Let's try to go back. Even though my book is showing here in the organic search results, I'm running a sponsored product ad and it's showing above organic. So this is a good way to do like brand defense. Like I want to be over Becca Syme's book. So here I am, even though my organic listing is down there. And this is a sample book page. Let's see, let me get a highlight here. And this highlight down at the bottom, this is the sponsored products widget, which is called products related to this item. This will always be below the primary book detail somewhere. Sometimes it's up here and sometimes it's down here. Amazon's always playing with these placements. In the middle of the page here in orange, I've highlighted a placement that sometimes is powered by sponsored products and sometimes by sponsored brands, and sometimes even other ad programs. It is not considered a primary placement for any of these at this time, though. And then finally, this red box here below the buy box is another ad placement, but right now it's only available to a small amount of book advertisers. The ad type is called sponsored display. So Lockscreen, these are only device placements. Here you have the full screen ad on the locked Kindle e-reader, the banner ad on the Kindle e-reader homepage, and the full screen on the Fire tablet, which, as you can see, is in full color. The e-reader is always black and white. Earlier, I provided a list of subjects that are hot spots, but these issues and subjects that I called out are particularly sensitive on lock screen ads. So there will be a higher bar due to its prominence. There's going to be a higher bar to gain entry to these ads. So let's talk a bit about how ads work. And then we're going to stop for some questions. This is my unsanctioned translation of how ads work. This is a rudimentary view, and I'm sure any engineer that would hear me walk through it like this would cringe. It's the most technical part of today. If it's too much for you, please bear with me. You don't need to memorize it. You don't need to understand all of it. I just want you to have general familiarity of the flow so you can have context for decisions you might need to make later. So let's start here up in the, oops, I don't know what's happening here with my screen. Here we go. Let's step up here in the top left. You are going to create an ad using targeting that makes sense for your book. And you'll set a bid for a click on that target. Your ad will then go into moderation. And that means it will be reviewed against the guidelines. There is some machine reviewing that happens, but there is also humans that review every book that gets advertised. And you can see that can cause some moderation inconsistencies. Amazon will take your targeting and your bid and then match it to that metadata of your book. It will look at the categories that you've placed it in and the keywords that you've assigned to it. So it's basically doing a check to make sure that your book and your ads are aligning. This is the assessment for relevance. So now your bundle of the ad and the book data, it's sent off to stand in line to meet a reader. A reader or customer then searches or browses for a book, and then ads in line are vetted again for that specific customer during that specific browsing session. So all of the ads that get through that vetting now, and that's the sourcing, selection, relevance, all of those ads now go to auction. You're going to be competing against other authors with similar targets, and then Amazon serves what it believes to be the most relevant ad to that user at that time. I want to clarify, though, there's not just one winner on the auction. There are multiple ads returned in a search result, and multiple ads, many ads, get returned from the auction display on the detail page. If you remember, I showed the carousel at the bottom of the page earlier, and there are 7 slots there, and then you can flip through that carousel. So once the winning ad or ads display for the customer, then the data is sent to your ads dashboard. So before we get into what it takes to be successful, let's pause here and see if there are any questions. Claire, do you have any questions for me at this time or not yet?
Okay. Let me come off mute here for just a second and tell you that I have we have no questions that have been posted either on Facebook or in the chat here. So
Okay.
if anyone has a question, you can post it now. Oh, wait, we do. Faye just posted, does auction depend on money spent? Thank you, Faye.
Does auction depend on money spent? Auction does not depend on past money spent, but it will depend on the money you're willing to spend. not in the budget as a whole, but your bid for that target.
She says, thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone else have so Shelley Riley asks, what is the most popular genre?
Well, romance and mystery, thriller, suspense are the big ones.
Yeah, that tends to happen in a lot of our conversations, mystery and romance.
Actually, I can add also sci-fi. And so with the three of those, you can expect to see pretty high costs per click. So be aggressive in your bidding as much as you can be.
Okay. So let's go on. June is asking, how do we target?
I'm going to cover that today.
Okay, that's great.
Patient. We'll get into that for sure.
Okay, that's perfect. So that's all. Oh wait, Alice is asking, does Amazon offer help for creating ads?
Yes, they will help you. I think there are some actions that you can take in the dashboard where there'll be a pop-up in the US anyway. There'll be a pop-up and they'll say, are you sure you want to leave? Do you need help with this? I don't know what actions trigger that pop-up. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. So I don't know if they're testing it. But really there are YouTube videos and all kinds of resources to actually walk you through how to do it.
I'm sure there are businesses that cater to things like that as well.
Well, my business caters to that too, but I really think you don't need to pay to have somebody set up your initial ads. I don't tout that service.
That's very nice of you. Peggy Chan's asking, what's the criteria for winning ad? How aggressive do we need to be?
That can be a little bit of a complicated answer. When I say aggressive, I'm going to say that in those three genres that I just said, I typically do not start out lower than 75 cents. I will have a baseline bid of, let's say, 75 cents. And then I will have, if I have a range of 10 different targeting segments, and we'll talk about those segments in a minute, but if I have a range of targeting segments, there might be some that I think are more valuable to me, and I might bid like $1.25 for something that's that valuable. But you're going to get that $1.25 number. I just pulled it out of thin air. These are the things that you look at, though, to assign a higher value like $1.25. What do you think the value of that target is? For instance, if I am targeting an author that I think is a strong comp, and I think their audience will like my book too, I might go aggressive, but I have to see, is the conversion there? Am I actually getting the return on that? Am I getting strong sales on that to earn out my cost? Also, when you're coming up with your number of like your most aggressive bid, you have to think about, do I have a series or is it one book? If I have one book, I can't go as aggressive because I'm only going to get the royalty on that one book. If I have a series and I'm advertising book one, I should be looking at what's the longer term lifetime value, which is the read through value. I might have 5 books in the series. And if I send people to my book one, that's free, right? I know most of them get through that 5 and I might make $5 off of it. So that's a whole deep dive kind of question on how to assign those values. But when I'm talking about aggressive, like in romance and mystery thriller and science fiction, I don't even start lower than 75 cents.
Good. That's great information. Thank you. So one more question has come in. Matt has asked, on average, how many clicks result in a sale? Are there data for that?
We never track that data internally. I have heard people on the outside say, oh, you should be getting 1 in 6. I don't necessarily believe that. I look at the profitability of it.
Okay, that's great. So that we've exhausted the questions so far. I'm sure that more will come up.
All right, so let's talk about, now that we got the basics, let's touch on what it takes to be successful. First, product readiness. Your book is now a product. And we talk about it like a book, but if you just change your mindset for a little bit, some of this may seem a little less scary. I like to use the word product, but that's probably coming from big tech and my years as a product manager, but I do invite you to shift your thinking. Put on your business manager hat. This is a product you're putting out in the world. We all know that language is important. This is no different. You treat your product like you treat your book like a real product, and that helps remove you a little bit. Take one step back, remove that emotional connection to your baby and realize it's an adult now. You're going to send it out in the world. And the reason why I say this is because you're going to need to make level-headed decisions along the way based on data, even though there's going to be some qualitative data nonetheless. And sometimes you're going to get very frustrated, let's say when targets don't work. So if you think about it a little bit less like your baby and more like a product, that should help with that. Advertising ready products are 16 times more likely to be clicked on if advertised than non-advertising ready products. I know that's a mouthful. Let's talk about what advertising ready means. Amazon employs a model that will calculate the propensity for customers to engage with products. And they look at multiple factors. And this calculation determines a product's advertising readiness. So we want to be ready. What does it mean to be ready? If you walk away with one thing today, I actually want it to be this slide, because even though it's not specific to advertising, I cannot tell you how much it matters. It matters, it matters, it matters. Being advertiser ready means you've done your due diligence and you have optimized your organic listing on Amazon, and you're seriously ready to hang your shingle out for anybody that comes by. So your title, this might seem too obvious, but it's not. It should make sense. Obviously, in books, there are expected to be vagaries and nuance. But if you're using a subtitle, make sure it clarifies the title and leverages search engine optimization principles that make sense for your book. Amazon will index this. This becomes part of your metadata that all of your targeting and customers are going to connect with, whether or not they know it. Your cover art. When your cover surfaces in search results and the ads displayed on a competitor's page, because we want that to happen, that's how we get their audience, it needs to entice the reader to click. A weak cover can dissuade a prospective reader in a nanosecond if they see it, or they may gloss over your book entirely because it just fades away. We see this in ads data. We see this in, let's say, ad impressions, but no clicks. So your design, including fonts, should be professional looking, and it should align with the expectations of your book and genre or subgenre. If you have a series, check for continuity across the series brand. And really be sure to review your thumbnail version, because many customers are browsing on mobile, and it can have a significant impact on a negative impact if the legibility is rough. And your blurb and book description, you need to hook your reader. The customer clicked on your ad primarily because the cover resonated with them. The point of that detail page copy, right? That's your sales page. The point is to validate that initial interest when the customer clicked, right? So you want to validate that interest and have it convert to a sale or download. Use a strong headline, hook the reader. And, you know, some customer intentions, their decisions may be made less intentionally. And the book description is actually one of those things where people, if they're going to read it, it's going to be a conscious input for the decision to convert. So make sure it accurately describes what the reader can expect from your book. Another thing on that book description page is the look inside the book. Not enough authors actually look to see what is showing in Look Inside the Book, and that is your reader's first bite. Now, interesting on Look Inside the Book is that on the print version of it, it's actually indexed. So anything that you have in the beginning of your book that's showing in Look Inside the Book, Amazon has stored that, and that can contribute to the metadata of your book. Your pricing again, align. It needs to align with your comps and the bookshelf, right? Your virtual bookshelf. Are you in line with what others are doing? If you look at the bestseller page for your subgenre, you'll see the trends in pricing. So make sure that you're aligned. And I know that some folks want to be more aligned with, indie pricing, which is typically a little bit more discounted. And then others might want to align with trad authors, but still take a look and just make sure you're aligning. A+ detail page content. This is something that was just rolled out in the past year for authors. It's fantastic and can really boost the professionalism of your page. It can also do the opposite, but make it meaningful. It takes up a lot of real estate on your listing page, and you can share more content to lure readers to convert. Star ratings. If you have low star ratings, that's under 3.5, I would really reconsider advertising at this time. Fix the book or write another, but I would caution against investing in ads if your ratings are low. And reviews. I know a lot of authors do not like to read their reviews. I totally understand why. But sometimes if you or somebody else that if you have a virtual assistant or somebody in your family or a friend that can do it, comb those reviews for improvements in your book, and also sound bites. Sound bites for targeting are fantastic. And lastly, which could actually be number 1 instead of number 9 here, is review your metadata. Your metadata is the engine under the hood that's going to power the site traffic to your books. It's first influenced by the information you include in your KDP listing, but Amazon creates more metadata based on that. And so both your retail suggestions, organic search results, everything is influenced by this. So make sure that it's in line, again, with your comps. Make sure you're clear on your on your keywords, which are different than keyword targets, and make sure you're ready to go. I'm highlighting here basics. These 9 things are basics that I consider to be prerequisites for ads. Maybe not A+ detail page content, because that's additional creative. But these elements here will help users find your book when browsing. And the mission here is that when you go pay for ads, you're going to have the right customer click on your ad. You're going to have that readers' expectations should be met by the book description, and for nothing to stand in the way of that customer converting to a reader. So do what you can to eliminate objections before you pay to advertise. So where to find targets? Within Amazon ads, there is a customer search term report. So once you're running ads, you can then run a customer search term report, and you can actually see what words the customer actually typed into that search bar that then met and were matched with the targeting that you put into your ads. You can also find targets, especially keyword targets, just on Amazon, using the retail search bar. If you want to write, let's say, if you have a domestic thriller, you can do a couple things. First, just type domestic into the Amazon search bar. It will autofill, and it will probably give you 3 to 5 variations of that search term that you might want to advertise against. Also, you can take any one of those search terms that auto-populates and see who comes up on the first page or two. You might want to copy them down and use those as targets. And then there's off Amazon opportunities to find targets. There's free reader sites like Goodreads, Libby, Book Riot. You can search anywhere and find all kinds of things just to get ideas. And then there's third-party tools that you can pay for, like Publisher Rocket. I do use Publisher Rocket. I call that out because a lot of people ask me that question, so I'll save that question. It is relatively cheap for a lifetime subscription. I do, however, sometimes find that the data is coming straight from Amazon and it can feel a little polluted. So if you're going to use Pub Rocket, I strongly suggest that you still curate whatever results they give you. Patience and willing to experiment. It's required for success. There is no shortcut. It takes time to get a signal. What do I mean by time? Well, let me break it down. If you are creating an ad with a set of targets, those ads need to go out in the wild and see if Amazon serves it and does it think you're relevant, and then see how the customers react. So this is the performance reporting on your dashboard, and this is your signal, your data signal. This data signal is going to inform what's working and what's not. So what are these times on screen? Well, it can take up to 72 hours for your book to be human moderated before it goes live. Don't let 72 hours scare you, because really it can happen, usually happens overnight maximum. You will need 2 to 3 days for an ad to even take off, just to get it to start serving. And then overall, not on a specific campaign, but overall, you're going to need about 2 to 3 months when you're starting for experimentation. And this doesn't matter if you are brand new or you're me. When I'm working with an author and we're getting ads going, it's still taking 2 or 3 months to get like that solid set of what's working and what's not working. And part of the reason why it takes that time for experimentation is because on the ads dashboard, the metrics are not complete until 14 days. That's what we call the attribution window. So basically, if you show an ad and you have a click, it will record a customer's purchase from that click for the next 2 weeks. So there's no rushing the process. And this is where many authors do wind up getting impatient. You also need some financial tolerance. You know, your budget, it's the amount you're willing to spend to advertise, and you're required to set a campaign level budget, which can be a daily budget or for the duration of your campaign. But before you can do that at the campaign level, you really need to think about your finances and what you can allocate towards ads, because you're not going to be getting a whole bunch of sales off it initially. You're going to have to experiment, and there's going to be some fails in that experiment. Everybody has them. What should I spend on ads is one of the most common questions I get. If you're just starting out, you're going to need to determine a monthly budget for what I think is like a 3-month investment. This budget is going to be divided amongst all of your campaigns. This is true regardless of where you are in your author journey. Like I said, ad success is going to take time. As a new author, I would say just set aside this chunk of money, about 3 months, 3-month run. It doesn't have to be $500. I'm just saying this is an example. And then after the 3 months, completely reevaluate. It doesn't have to be a big number. You just need to spend it across multiple campaigns. And if your books, oops, we lost the share. All right. And if your books are already selling and you're already advertising, you can always allocate a percentage of the previous sales performance. For example, 20% is a common one of the average monthly sales. And then that just, you can continue to work against that. Let's see here. Any questions before we get into the top tips?
We did have a few questions. So June asked, what is the detail page?
That is your sales page. So it's your book listing on Amazon, where your cover is and all the details of it. And that's where people land from ads and check out to buy your book.
Good, thank you. And Frank asked, which is something that we can probably touch on later. He does not want to do all of this work. So we're back to the question of who can he pay to have this done for him. So that's something we can talk about toward the end too, if you'd like to do that, Janet.
Okay.
Okay.
I feel
Hold
this-
on, Frank. We'll come back to that.
Any other questions before I go on?
There are not. Those are the two that have popped up. I'll keep watching them.
Okay, I think this is the next part though, the final part, I think is what people are waiting for. The top tips. This is true for all beginners or anyone who needs a reset on their ads after struggling for a while. Tip number 1 is to start with sponsored products. This is where you're going to learn. If you're new to ads or confused, when you're selecting your campaign type, you want to select sponsored products. It is the most consistently performing type of all self-service ads, the easiest to get started with, and the most fully baked for books. A lot of these ad types were not made with books in mind, so we see a lot of funkiness in using them for books, but sponsored products is the one that's had just a lot of refinements specifically with the book's use case in mind. So this stat, it's 2 years old. I'm sure it's about the same, or it's actually now almost 3 years old. I'm sure it's about the same that ASINs who are using sponsored products, that ASINs, that's products, saw a weekly 40% lift in units ordered within the first year. It's Amazon's flagship ad product. It's been around the longest. And like I said, it's the most customized. It also has what I call placement power. This is the power of visibility. Sponsored products is the most diverse set of placements than any other ad product. And I'd assert that it has even a more meaningful set of placements for authors. The core placements are in search and on product detail pages, which is also the core of the customer journey, right? And this, you have to be where the customers are. But in addition, sponsored products is so proven that it may also power other placements from time to time. So when I was showing that detail page, this book sale page, I showed a sponsored products carousel that was towards the bottom, but many times it will power the middle spot. Many times it will power the one under the buy box, because it's just, there's a lot of sponsored ads there from which they can pull sponsored products ads. And it also just, it works so much better than the other ad types in my view. And that placement volume means you have more opportunities for impressions. It's the fastest path to sales, and it is the fastest way to learn ads. It is the gold star that all ad types at Amazon wish to be. And anytime Amazon is creating another ad product, it looks to sponsored products because they really do consider it to be the best, and they want to leverage its systems. This means that any knowledge you gain using sponsored products is likely to apply across the board. This may feel a little abstract now, but it is really worth knowing sponsored products inside out. So my recommendation is, if you haven't guessed it by now, start with sponsored products. Anything else is a waste of your time and money to start. Number 2, use standard ads. Now here you can see on screen, there is the opportunity to create 2 different ad formats, a custom text ad. This is all within sponsored products, by the way, or a standard ad. In custom text, in your ad, you have an ability to put some language in there. I do not recommend starting with that. If you want to understand the underpinnings of how ads work and how you can make them work for you, eliminate the noise of that additional text and just start with a standard ad. Now, I said eliminate the noise. This is really important for beginners and for anyone who's been advertising and maybe suffering from either a messy dashboard with a ton of campaigns and a ton of targets. When you run an ad campaign, you're getting performance data. This data signals what's working and what's not. And we don't want to spend money on what's not working. If there's noise in the data, it's hard to understand any trends, and you wind up leaving on stuff because you think it's working and it's not. And it hinders your learnings. So using optional features introduces variables in your signal, variables that we don't need and they get in our way. Instead, we do what we can, especially when we're learning, to tamp down that noise. Make sure your performance data in your dashboard is a signal that you can hear loud and clear. Bells and whistles are not your friend. So I already mentioned custom text, but I also want to mention this goes for bidding. Dynamic bidding, no, don't do it. We'll cover that in a minute. Bid by placement, don't do it. Custom text, which we just talked about, don't do it. Suggested bids, ignore it. These are not your friend. So recommendation, basic standard ad only with no custom text, no end date, and no optional features. You might thank me for this. Next, I want you to focus on getting impressions. This applies to new advertisers, but it could apply to existing advertisers. I want you to think about this first for any new target or campaign that you're adding. Let's talk about what's an impression. Each time your ad displays to a customer, it counts as one impression. When I say it displays for a customer, it doesn't mean that they land on the page. It means that it's actually in their viewport. They've seen it. Unless they have their eyes closed, they've seen it. Amazon is tracking that. So I have this whole snapshot here just to show you, for those who are not accustomed to the ads dashboard, there's a lot of data here. It can be really overwhelming. So when you're starting, just start on getting impressions here in this column. That's where you want to focus. Why does this matter? Every time your ad displays, you're not going to get a click and you're not going to get a sale. Impressions are needed to get multiple clicks, and those multiple impressions are needed to get multiple clicks, so that those clicks can convert to an order or pages read. And if you can't get enough impressions, you will not be getting sales or royalties. Your ad success is going to change over time. So make the first goal impressions, and then later you can start looking at clicks and click-through rate and conversions and the cost. We don't need to focus on that. Remember, you're not getting any of that if you don't get the base layer of impressions. How do you do this? You're going to set a campaign daily budget that will get you the impressions you need, and you're going to set bids to win the auction. We just talked about, somebody had asked about what is an aggressive bid. That's what we're talking about here. Aggressive, get in there aggressively to win that auction. Why is this important? Well, if you're looking at the budget, and I say set a budget so you can get impressions, Amazon's going to forecast your campaigns. It's going to ask, how many clicks could this campaign afford to get? How many impressions can the campaign need to get those clicks? And then the number of impressions is going to be divided across all of your targets in a single campaign. You do not need to do all this math. Just know that going too little is going to constrict you. You don't have to go massive, but you do have to be reasonable. Avoid those pitfalls of frugality. If you start to go lower towards $5 a day, that's what I consider a low daily budget, you're going to be stuck waiting to get impressions, and those impressions are the start of the signal. If you don't have the signal, you don't know what's working and what's not. You're probably hearing a theme in this. So my recommendation is to start campaigns at $10 a day. This will get you enough impressions, and that's what you need. Also, used fixed bids. This is really important for, oh, wait, I think we have lost a slide. So you're going to keep it clean with fixed bids. So dynamic bids here, I keep talking about noise and signal. Dynamic bids here may give off more noise. When you're creating a campaign, Amazon is going to offer you these 3 bidding strategies: dynamic up and down, dynamic down only, and then fixed bids. These 2 dynamic bidding strategies are making too many calculations for us to even know what the heck is going on at the beginning. So let's talk about how this works. If you're using dynamic bids, let's say you're bidding 75 cents, Amazon is going to look at your propensity to convert. And it can say, hey, I don't think this is a great fit for you, so we're only going to send you and your book in for 50 cents. Even though it is, you said you're willing to pay 75 cents. It's going to bring you in at 50 cents. So if there's someone else that's paying 60 cents, they can win over you. And this is a situation where the bidding mechanisms and auction were built for non-books. It's only going to look at sales. So this is critical for anybody in Kindle Unlimited because Amazon's calculation will not forecast pages read. So this is how we see constricted impressions. Introducing these new variables will just make your head spin. So again, you're going to be straightforward and get those impressions by selecting fixed bids. You're saying, hey, do not touch my bid. This is what I'm willing to pay. If you're worried about cost, know that it's still a second priced auction. So you're not always going to pay the amount of your bid. It just means that's the number that goes into the auction. This is recommended if you want to keep your mouth simple and just want to understand the bare bones relevance of your target. So recommendation, select fixed bids and no additional bidding rules or modifiers. Lastly, quality targets matter over quantity, and I really encourage you all to consider small batches. Small batch targeting should be highly relevant targeting. Keeping it tight is creating small segments of targets. You want your targets to be closely aligned. So you're choosing manual targeting with small segments of targets closely aligned. So doing this is going to force dedicated spend to these targets and give you great insight. Let's talk about some use cases for this in no particular order. When you see targets in a campaign that aren't getting impressions, in spite of a strong bid, and you think they're really relevant, like you think it's a good match for your book, if you have strong keywords that you want to build off of, you can take them and put them in a dedicated campaign with dedicated budget. If you have a strong performing target in an auto campaign that you want to allocate that budget towards, bring it into a small batch. If you've already increased bids aggressively, but Amazon is still not consuming the budget, bring it into a small batch campaign. And lastly, if your ads are spending efficiently, but you have a golden target and you're like, this is amazing, this is converting, customers love it, I'm getting sales, I want more. If it can't spend more in that campaign, you can break it off into its own campaign. All of these have one thing in common: ads can't take off or they won't scale the way you want them to. So they're not getting enough ads love. So let's actually give an example here. You see that you're in a campaign and you see that the keyword Diane Capri, an author, works really well as a keyword. You can create a Diane Capri campaign or ad group with her author brand name and related targets. So you might have in there Diane Capri, and then you might have specific book titles or variations on her name. You're controlling the budget allocation towards an audience that has responded well to your book ad. That's the small batch. Similarly, you have two keywords that are highly relevant to your book, let's say cozy mystery or cozy culinary, and they're in a campaign with 20 other keywords. The other keywords are getting impressions, but these aren't, and you don't understand it. You've expressed a high bid and the targets won't take off, even though you think they're really relevant. So you pull them out, you create a new campaign and add only those keywords. You're basically attempting to force Amazon to look at this campaign. My recommendation is to view small batch targeting as hyper budget control. Identify a highly curated set of targets that you are confident warrant your dedicated budget allocation. You're basically forcing an investment here. So just let me recap. This is what I want you all to do. If you're going to get started with ads, start with sponsored products, eliminate that noise and use basic ads with no optional features. Set your first goal to be getting those impressions. And then your direct road to those impressions is using fixed bidding, and then keep it tight and relevant by using smaller batches. That's all I have for today. Questions?
That's great. There are some questions, actually. We lit up here toward the end.
All right.
So Stefan asks, what percentage of ad spending results in profitable sales? Are there data for that?
No, that is a big number. It's a great number to have. I do not have that number. And I will tell you this too, if anybody can give you this number, it's all incredibly volatile per advertiser. And I can say that working with advertisers, top advertisers, mid-list, and newbies alike. It's a very volatile number.
Okay. June has several questions. We'll do one for, I'm just going to do these in order. So we might bop around here a little bit.
Okay.
June is asking, is it best to make the first book in the series free?
I really love that approach. But it's not for everyone. I do think that what is more important is putting your ads investment towards book one, no matter what you price it, no matter how you price it.
Right. Yeah. So that speaks more to technique, I think, and who you are as a person. If you feel that you're going to, if your book is going to draw readers to buy the second or third one. I tend to figure I'm one of those suckers that gets a first free book and then I feel compelled to pay for the second one. And Amazon does a good job of popping that second book up as a purchase option right away as soon as I get a free book.
Yeah, a lot of people, though, also, they're freebie collectors too. So I think what you really need to do is look at what your peers are doing, your peers and your comps. Your peers are not always your comps, right? And, there are tools like, you can ask around in the author community for your subgenre, but there are also tools like K-Lytics that give you reports on pricing if you want to go really data oriented on it.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to pop back in just so I'm not the disembodied voice coming from.
Okay.
We have some speakers who say, I wish you'd come back on because I'm feeling I'm talking to nobody. So Heidi asks, why do you recommend no end date? Because she has taken another course where an end date was recommended.
So there used to be a theory. I think there's some courses out there that do have very outdated information. And there used to be, let's see, it was pre-2018 about is when late 2017, early 2018 is when we actually migrated the ad platform and for authors into the main ad platform. And with that came a lot of changes. And there were certain ad types back then that no longer exist that you could kind of force an ad to serve by putting an end date on it. So that's an old trick that I think is really outdated. Now I see absolutely no benefit to doing that. I think you're on mute.
You're on mute, Lori.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I
There we
know.
are.
2 syllables. Sorry, I muted myself because we've got background noise. I forgot to come off. So I'm still going to take these in order, but I just want to address, Carolyn asked if we'll be able to get copies of the presentation. And yes, you will. We're pushing to Facebook Live, so it's always going to be available to you if you go to the MWA NorCal Facebook page and look in the video section. And Claire and I are also going to try to get this into our YouTube channel. So yes, it will be made available. Okay, so then let's see. June has asked, when your ad gets an impression, is it just one book among many in that sort of row thing? So
yeah, so if you're in the row, well, let me actually first talk about search results. because I showed an example of search results where there were 2 ad slots, but it's one book, right? And then the line of search results. When you're on the carousel on the detail page, which by the way is where most ad sales come from, is the detail page, not search. You are one of about 7. And the user does have the opportunity to click through to other ones. But if you're like on page 2 of the carousel, it's not counted as an impression until they actually go into it and look.
That's interesting. And I think many of us are also learning a new language today, because
yeah, I'm
we
really
use those words.
sorry. Like I got 3/4 of the way through and I was like, oh gosh, I don't know how well versed in ads people are.
That's okay. It's best, I think, just to jump in and use the proper terminology and let us catch up, which you're doing a fantastic job of explaining this so that even I can understand it. So June asks again, should we advertise just the first book in the series or all the books in a series?
So I usually, when I'm working with people, I usually recommend to do the first book in the series. There are others who, have other preferences. First book in the series can turn out to be most profitable, particularly if you've calculated your read through, right? So if you know that most, let's say 70%, whatever, of customers make it to book 2, and of those who get to book 2 get a certain percentage get to book 3. If you calculate your read through, just advertising on book 1 can prove to be very profitable.
Nice. A follow-on to that, or June asks again while you were getting something else. I do not recall being given the opportunity to choose targets in my experience with Amazon ads. Is there a way to be sure that we get to choose our targets?
Yeah, there's 2 key options there when you start your campaign. You'll be presented with automatic targeting or manual targeting. Automatic, you're letting the ads algorithm do its thing, which can be fine if you have some sales history on Amazon. But if it's a new book cold start, you might want to jump right into the manual targeting. And manual targeting is where you can pick your 3 different types of targeting: the ASIN targeting, keyword targeting, or category targeting.
Great. And David asks, does it make sense to target specific books or authors that are the closest to your own work? Or are keywords better?
It can be both. I do not recommend any one path. I actually recommend using different targeting strategies through sponsored products, different targeting strategies to hit customers in different ways. And it's not so much about the placement, but it is about the way Amazon decides to source the ads. Like Amazon says, oh, am I going to pick an ASIN targeted ad or a keyword targeted ad? And those are kind of black box conditions. We don't know what those are. So I think it's fantastic to use your comps or real close adjacent authors as your baseline, and start targeting them by the book title, by the author name, and by the ASIN.
Nice. So that's the end of the questions that we've gotten in the chat. I think we are close to the end, but I'm not going to end our conversation here on Zoom. I am going to stop the Facebook Live push.
Okay.
So thank you to all of our fans out there in Facebook world who have joined us today. The video will be ready for you. Oh, Claire, do you have something to say?
There was a question about how do you hire someone to do this, because it sounds like a lot of work.
Oh yeah, so Frank did say this, he'd just rather give someone a little money and make this happen for him. Do you want to address that before we stop the live stream?
Sure. It's just not something that I generally recommend, because it can be very costly. It is a lot of work for whomever is going to be running your ads. It's a fair amount of work. If I take on a new client, which I'm not doing for fully managed ads right now, but when I do take on a new client, it takes me quite a while. I invest a lot of time, a lot of hours into understanding their catalog and making those ads run efficiently and scaling and all that stuff. So it becomes expensive, and it's really financially not worth it unless you have a big catalog and, you know, pretty juicy organic sales. There are ad services out there that will do it on the cheap. I just don't know what the benefit of it is for you.
Right.
I have to say though, if anybody has follow-up questions from this, you can go to my website, and I'm not touting my services because they may not be appropriate for you. But I'm happy to answer these questions. I don't want to give recommendations out to anyone, like referrals to anyone, without actually talking about their use case specifically. But folks can reach out to me.
That's very nice of you. That's a great offer.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to stop the live stream.